All right, so we're going to be recreating a website using HTML and CSS. So we're going to be specifically recreating Hacker News, which has the URL news.ycombinator.com. So it's a very popular site for the hacker and dev community. You can find jobs and a lot of really relevant news. So it's like the Reddit for hackers, essentially. And you can upvote and leave comments on posts. And it's very simple and easy to use. So in this case, we're going to be mimicking we're going to write HTML code that simulates Hacker News. We don't have to worry about styling yet. We'll get to that later. We just want to get the overall look down as much as possible. And we don't need to get any of the actual functionality. We don't need to upvote or anything like that. So first, before we do anything else, we should actually look at the actual website. Is there a way I can just click on this and get the URL? What does that say? Option click. Nice. All right, so looking at this, it's a pretty simple layout. We've got a navigation bar at the top that has the logo. It has essentially a thing to the home page, some links to interact with the website, a login thing, and then we've got the ranking right here. In this case, we don't need to worry about the ranking or anything like that. We just need to get this looking kind of the way it does here. So first off, I'm going to make a HTML page and create the basic skeleton of it using this shortcut. So !tab gives me this very excellent skeleton right here, and I can even change the title to Hacker News Clone. And then I can open up index.html in my browser, and right now there's nothing there besides the title Hacker News Clone.
No, how did you do that again? Explanation what?
I'm using an extension called Emmet, which I believe you should all have, and if you don't, you should get EMMET. And that gives you a bunch of great shortcuts. In this case, the one to create this HTML skeleton is !tab. If you do that with that plugin installed, you should be able to recreate this framework with just 2 keystrokes.
How do you spell it?
EMMET.
I think we probably installed it because it worked for me, and I know I didn't go get it on my own.
Okay. Well, if you in the meantime, if you haven't gotten already, the things that you should have, and you can do it by hand and very, very quickly, are the HTML tags, the head tags, and the body tags. All this other stuff right here is optional. Okay. So in order to recreate this, we should probably take a look at just how they did it. So I'm going to inspect the page. So looking up, so they have the body. They have something called a center tag. So let's take a look at what that does. Center tag HTML. So it says here it's not supported in HTML5. It was used in HTML4 to center align text. So looks like we can use it, but it's not really it's not part of HTML5 anymore. So let's not go with that. Instead, let's just add a div, which will serve as the container for everything that we've got. And then they have a table. I'm just going to kind of close it. Oh, did not mean to do that. So one thing that's cool, I just accidentally showed you this, is if you click on this, you can actually make it look like you're looking at what it looks like on mobile as opposed to a browser. It's like food for thought. So it looks like they put everything else inside a table. All right, so what does a table do in HTML? Has anyone encountered the table tag before?
It's a container.
It is a container.
It organizes information into what we would, what we simply call a table, rows and column organization.
Exactly. So table is a very, very basic way of organizing your website. It allows you to add things in rows and columns, just like you said. And we can look up a little bit because the table has very particular ways of interacting. You can't just write table. So so the example they have here that contains 2 columns and 2 rows is they have the table tag. They have TR, which stands for table row, TH, which stands for table heading, and TD, which stands for, I'm actually not sure what the D stands for in TD.
Data.
Data, thank you. So, and we can see their example right now just to see what it looks like. So everything's inside this table. Here are the headers in one row, and here's the data in other rows. So I don't think we're going to need table headers for this one, but we're definitely going to want some table rows and TDs. So let's just try getting this particular area first. So they have a very specific way of doing it, but I'm just going to do a very basic one. So I'm going to put a table tag here. Inside that, I'm going to put a table row. And so this table row is going to be our Hacker News navigation bar. And it looks like they have a background color here of, let's just copy their background color. I know we said we're not going to do that much styling. I'm not even going to use a CSS style sheet here for now. I'm just going to say, let's just be style equals background color. We don't need those quotation marks. So if we look at our page now, still nothing there because there's no actual content inside this table row. Seeing if the chat's pretty active, make sure I'm not missing anything. Right.
Just questions about whether or not Emmet is built in to VS Code. I thought if you save a file as HTML or HTML and do the bang tab, it should work, is my understanding. It's built into VS Code for basic HTML, but maybe I missed it.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I'd have to do some research on that because I installed this months ago. All right.
See if Jason can get it working. That should confirm it.
All right, so let's put some information inside our TR just to make sure we've got the style looking right at least. So I'm just going to write Hacker News here. All right, maybe we need to put it inside a TD. There we go. So we got something there. It's not exactly what we want, but it's getting there. So let's take a look at exactly. So right here, they have this kind of Y logo. I'm not sure if that's an image or just a stylized letter Y. So let's put another TD there. That's just the letter Y for now. All right, starting to come together a little bit. All right, then they have these things. So new, post, comments, ask, show, jobs, and submit. So I can tell these are links. So what kind of tag do we need if we want to display a link?
Anchor tag.
Did you say anchor?
Yeah, anchor tags.
All right, so what does an anchor tag do?
Formal way of saying a link.
Yep. So in this case, these links don't actually have to go anywhere, but we still need them. So I'm thinking I'm actually going to put all of these inside just one TD. See how that works out? So I'm just going to put a hash there, which is kind of it's kind of a universally acknowledged placeholder for links. So it was new. And then I can see that they put little pipes in between them. So I'll make sure to put pipes there as well. Then it was passed. And let's actually do some copy pasting here. Don't.
No, you could just do strings without a tag like that.
I'm sorry?
You could just do a string, the pipe like a string with no tags. It just gets rendered.
Yep, if we take a look at what we have so far. There it is. So comments. All right, so new, past, comments. Ask, show, job, submit. Oops. All right, so again, not exactly what we're looking for, but it is kind of getting there almost. And then they have the login thing over here. Interesting, the login is on the opposite side of everything else. And I can actually take a look and see how they did that here. So they have a TD and they have the style, text align, right. Okay, let's try that. So I'm gonna have one more TD. Have just a link that goes to nothing. Say login. And I'll say style equals text align right. There's a good chance that this won't work exactly as I hope it will, but let's take a look. Yeah, kind of figured that might happen. So let's take a look maybe if there's something here that can give us some more insight into why it's how they got that to work. So this is the element that got aligned to the right. So I noticed they have width equals 100% on their table. That might be part of it. Okay, that's a little bit better. Again, we still have these, like, we haven't put a real background on this. This doesn't look exactly the way I wanted it to, but I'm going to take it for now because I'm just trying to get the basic structure going as much as I can. All right. Any questions about, what questions do you have about what we've done so far? Whoops.
Okay, so using tables is kind of how I grew up doing HTML a long time ago. So are we going to get to the point where we're kind of comparing and contrasting this with grid?
Yeah, that's something we're going to be
That's where
talking.
I was headed, right? I wanted to learn the new stuff. You got me all excited when you started showing me the grid stuff because I remember the days of float left and float right and Internet Explorer. So
Yeah, so table is considered kind of it's a little passé. You're right. Right, there is something called grid right now that is kind of the big new hotness. And I'm mainly showing you table because even though it is considered passé, you will encounter it in the wild. Like Hacker News is a very popular website and they still use table, for example. And again, I'm just trying to get a approximation of this, see how they did it. But we could also redo this in grid very, very easily. And we're going to talk, and you'll have a chance to encounter grid as we move on.
And just the, like, there's not a single way or proper way to design, whether it's, using tables, grids, or Flexbox. You can use anything, and no one's going to be like, oh, what the heck, why aren't you using Flexbox or grid over one or the other? There's not like a standard when it comes to what tool or what CSS type of ethos to use. So it's kind of just like do what you can to make it look the way you want it to.
Yep. It's one of those things where we're mainly concerned about the results.
I have a question about the strings that don't have text. It's just the pipes right now. So does that mean we can't style those because they're not associated with the tag? They're not,
Not
in the tag, I mean?
necessarily. They are associated with a tag. They're associated with this TD. So any styling we apply to this table data will also be applied to all of its child elements, which includes these. So right now, there's no way
It just
to
looks like it's floating, but it's inside the table tag or
exactly.
TD tag.
As
Okay.
long as it's in between two tags, it is considered a child of those tags, even if it specifically is not kind of contained in its own area.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
But even so, we could even just put unstyled, stuff in the body, and it would still show up. But if we wanted to just style these specific pipes and nothing else, we would need to put them inside their own tag of some kind, probably a span. But for now, this is a acceptable solution. All right. So we got our navigation. Right now, they just go nowhere. So let's get to kind of the body of this, taking a look at more how it looks. So this looks like it's all kind of part of one big block. So I think this is probably a subtable of the larger table everything else is kind of put into. So we can actually just go in another table row, put another table. And let's see what background color they're using. Excuse me. Does this fit? Let's try copying this one. So style, background color is that. Kind of an off-white. All right, so we have a subtable in here. We can add table rows here. Again, we don't need to actually have any real content here. We just need some kind of placeholder. So one thing I notice is that everything has a number there. So my instinct would tell me to say, okay, maybe this is a OL tag, possibly. Does anyone know what OL does? Or what it stands for?
Ordered list.
Yeah. An ordered list. So an ordered list gives you numbered bullet points to put everything on. I have a feeling that that's what I would originally think, but I have a feeling that's not actually how they did it. Yeah, it doesn't look like they actually used an OL for this, even though that would be my sense. They probably have some JavaScript here to determine what actual number goes there. So now I'm wondering, should we just put an OL inside of this table? That's not really considered the best practice after all. Well, you know what? I'm going to change this table into a div and put an OL inside of it because I feel like it. And I like OLs. So whenever you have an ordered list, on its own, it doesn't really do anything. But every item inside gets styled differently depending if it's an ordered list or an unordered list. And each item in that list is using the LI tag. So I put an LI and just say how to become a hacker, like it says there. Let's see what turns up. Whoa. All right, that's an interesting problem. So even though in our HTML, this div is below this other div, this table, it got styled above that. Anyone have an idea of why that might have happened? Because honestly, I don't know off the top of my head, and I'm very curious if anyone has any insight into this.
That div needs to be inside. Where did you stick it? It needs to be inside a table data somewhere.
Yep, so it's inside a table row, but it's not inside a table data. So let's see if putting this entire thing inside this table data will fix that. Ah, there we go. Yep, so by the looks of it, when you put something in a table, you can put something within a table tag and even within a TR tag, but if it's not within a TD, it just doesn't show it. So, or it doesn't consider it part of that table, I should say. So, lesson learned, if we want anything to show up as part of a table, we need, even if it's not really in the table, we need to make sure it shows up that way. And let's make sure the width of this one is 100% as well. So I'm just going to copy off this style. Let's try putting it maybe in the TD. Let's see if that works. Well, that's interesting. Tables are kind of finicky. So I'm very surprised that happened.
I think you have to use the call span for the table rows. You have to tell it how many columns to span.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so let's take a look at how to do that. So tr call span, or TD. So we could say TD call span equals 2. They have an example here. So it talks about how many columns, number of columns a cell should span. So the example they have here is at the bottom, they have something that it spans 2 columns. So the question is, how many columns do we already have? Looks like 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, looking at the way they did it, so it's not a style thing in this case, it's just something you put in directly. So this TD call span equals 4 in this case. Ah, there we go. That looks a lot better. All right, let's add a few more list items to this. Don't know why that got messed up the way it did. That's weird. Okay, whatever. And just call this one lorem ipsum dolor blah blah blah. Hacking is fun. All right, looks like we have a rogue LI somewhere. Oh, wait, okay, how did that happen? One sec. Let's try that again. There we go. All right. Not exactly the same, but we're starting to get there. What questions do you have so far about what we've been doing? Okay. I would like to get these little triangles here. Oops, didn't mean to do that. I meant to inspect it. Let's see how they get those triangle symbols. So this is actually a div by the look of it that has a class called vote arrow and a title upvote. And let's see here. So this looks like they've actually been using some, here we go, background image. So this is actually Very interesting. Okay. I wonder if we can, I don't know if we'll be able to get that exact URL of this image in this case. Oh wait, okay, we can copy. So it's, what is it? What news.ycombinator.com/grayarrow.gif. So let's try adding a little div here. Whoa. It's being a little overzealous. It's back, and then we say style equals background image. And then it was https news.ycombinator.com/grayarrow.gif. I have a terrible memory for these things. News.ycombinator.com. Let's see how that turns out. All right, not quite.
News, not new.
I'm sorry?
It was news, not new.
Oh, thank you. Still not showing up. We can see kind of what ends up in our Chrome inspector. Maybe we can copy this URL from here and see if it actually leads anywhere. There it is, little tiny thing. All right, so we got the URL correct. We just need to actually make it show up. Let's take a look at more what they did there. So it's got a width and a height. That may help. I'm actually trying to remember now if you can actually just, is this how you do it? How do you add multiple inline stylings to one thing?
You should be able to, and just separate it with semicolons.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't look like my VS Code agrees with that. It's expecting some curly cues now. So at this point, I feel like we're trying to do something that really should have a style sheet without a style sheet. Oh, now it's, what is this thing? Maybe. All right, that didn't fix it either. We have something right here. There's a warning. Invalid property value. Ah,
Oh,
okay. So we're doing something
URL.
wrong with that.
You have to add URL to background image, I think.
So let's look at that up. So CSS background image. Ah, this is how they do it. So URL, then in parentheses, that. We need to specify that we're using a URL. Let's see if that fixes it. If not, I'm just going to move on to something else. All right, so it's not saying it's invalid now. It's just not showing up. So I don't want to worry too much about this because there's just a lot of other things we can do. All right, so let's see. Well, we've got all this stuff. Actually, I'm not sure what else I want to do in this case, because if we take a look at their thing versus ours. All right, we've got a few things we can change to make it look better. So we could maybe, we have this div, maybe we could say padding is now, oops, got to style equals. Not padding, margin, because we want it to be away from the edges of the screen. Then you give it a good 20 pixels of margin, puts everything there. So not exactly right, but it is a start. So what questions do you have about this kind of very basic HTML exercise? Again, this is not like, you shouldn't be taking this as a gospel of how to accomplish this particular type of page. The cool thing about HTML is that there are a dozen ways to get to any particular outcome. So we could have used the table, we could have used the CSS grid system. A more modern page would maybe use a framework like Bootstrap or Foundation. So one thing I want to kind of encourage you all while you're going forward this week is to explore your options and really don't be afraid to take chances on new things and figure out how that works. So if you think, hey, this sounds exciting, I want to do this, just go for it. Don't worry about whether or not it's like the accepted solution or what's done these days. This is kind of a good chance to kind of follow your bliss a little bit. All right, so in that case, let's take a 10-minute break. Be back here at 9:57 and we'll go over today's lecture.